Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is George and I'm so pleased to have you back on my channel as we are continuing our series on the Bible study on Romans. And today we'll be covering Romans chapter 1 verse 1, and towards the end I'll share you the notes of the message which you can download from the description box, and also you can check out the previous video where we discussed from Romans chapter 1 verse 16 and also gave an introduction about Romans. In the previous lesson we saw that we should be proud about the gospel. We did a reflection if we are ashamed of the gospel or whether we are proud of the gospel. And today we're going to look on to Romans chapter 1 verse 1. In Romans chapter 1 verse 1, Paul says, Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle and set apart for the gospel of God. So here Paul calls himself an apostle, but it leads to something more striking. He leads to something more striking where he says a servant of Jesus Christ. A servant of Jesus Christ, in the Greek word it says a bond servant of Jesus Christ. Not an ordinary servant, but someone who doesn't have his rights, someone who doesn't have a leave, a slave. A normal servant is someone who has got his rights. A normal servant is someone who has got his benefits. But here, bond servant is someone who has left all his rights, left all his privileges, so that he can serve his master. But considering Paul, when you see he had so many credentials to call himself, he could have called himself as a Jew, he could have called himself as someone who caught up to the third heaven, he could have called himself of the apostolic ministry he done throughout the world, he could have called himself by the pastor who pastored multiple churches, he could have called himself a writer who wrote about 13 epistles, he could have called himself as a mighty man of God who raised people from the dead. But here he's calling himself a slave. He's calling himself a slave, and if you ask him, who are you? He says, I'm an apostle. What's your relationship with Christ? I'm a bond servant. I have no rights. I have sold out to Christ and I have nothing of my own. He has bought me with a price. And in an era, even the life of a bond servant was at the master's disposal. He did it in a time, he said it in a time when a bond servant's life, he couldn't even claim even if the master killed him. He had no legal standing to speak up for himself, and this is the depth of what Paul was meaning. In Matthew chapter 7 verse 21 we see, not everyone who says Lord, Lord will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but the only one he who does the will of the Father is he who enters into the heaven. So it's not enough to call Lord with the lips, but it's more important to accept the lordship of God. It's not about calling him Lord, but it's about having the lordship of him reigning in your life. And Paul, who was a slave to sin, when he was captivated by the glorious gospel, what he did, he laid down all his rights, he laid down all his privileges, and he said that I am willing to become a slave of Jesus. And this is the gospel. And true freedom rests in being a slave of Jesus Christ. Let me repeat, true freedom rests in being a slave of Jesus Christ. And the slave's only concern is, how can I please my master? How can I make my master happy? Under Mosaic law, a Hebrew servant was freed after 6 years. But if he wants to stay with the master, he could give a voluntary choice of himself. In Exodus chapter 21 verse 5 to 6 it says that if the servant declares, I love my master and I do not want to go free, then his master must take him to the judges, and he shall take him to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ears with an awl, and he will be his servant for life. And this is Paul's posture. He is not compelled by force, he is not pushed to do it, but he is saying that I'm so captivated by the love of my master that I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. I was once the chief of sinners, but now I'm a bond servant of Jesus Christ. And Paul calls himself a servant in multiple places in the Bible. In Philippians chapter 1 verse 1, Paul says, Paul and Timothy, servants of Jesus Christ. In Galatians he says, if I still try to please people, I will not be a servant of God. So how deep is your commitment with the Lord? Is he your Lord only in the name, or is he like Paul, who pierced his ears against the ear post and declared, I love my master and I will not go free? How is the surrender? How is the submission? And then he says, called to be an apostle. Called to be an apostle. So who is an apostle? Apostle is one sent by God. He was commissioned with divine authority and dispatched on a specific mission. Paul did not appoint himself, he was appointed by God. He was very sure of his calling and election, and that's why he derived his authority entirely from he who sent him. And then he says, called, separated for the gospel, set apart for the gospel, called to be a saint. The word saint means set apart. It is not a title earned by achievements. It is what every believer is, a vessel consecrated for God's exclusive use. To be set apart means I cannot look what the entire world looks because my eyes are set apart. I cannot speak what the entire world speaks because my tongue is set apart. I cannot think the way other people think because my mind is set apart. Set apart means I have set apart everything in my life for God and for His use and for His glory. And that's why Paul says again, I am an apostle. That's true. I am set apart for proclaiming the gospel. Why? Because I want to bring glory to God, because my only concern is how can I make my master happy. So how is your commitment? Are you a bond servant of Christ? Are you a bond servant of Christ? Are you captivated by the gospel to such an extent where you have surrendered all your rights, you have surrendered all your benefits, and you have laid it down at the feet of the cross, and you say that all I want now is to please the one who set me free, is to please the one who redeemed me, is to please the one who bought me with a price, is to please the one who bought me with the great love of the cross of Calvary. How many of you want to surrender your life to Jesus? Are you a bond servant of Jesus Christ? Let's examine ourselves. If you like this video, consider subscribing to the channel. You can get the notes of this video in the description box down below. You can also check out this playlist over here where you can see the rest of the videos. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care. God bless.